Hello, welcome to Chillin' Solo, where I play solo modes of board games so you guys can see how they work and what they play like. And today we are going to be playing the game called A Wayfarer's Tale by Wayfarer Games. Now, Wayfarer's Tale is a roll and write game where we will be exploring uncharted islands and trying to collect treasures and avoid monsters along the way. And before we get into the game, I'm going to give you an overview of the rules and how the game works. So as I said, this is a roll and write game, so we'll be rolling dice and using those dice then to explore our map. I'll explain quickly how the regular multiplayer version of the game works. So in a multiplayer game, each player will take turns being an active player. When you're the active player, you're going to roll these 3 white dice along with this red die. So you would roll them up, place them on your little player tray here, with the red one going into that square there. Now everybody then must choose 2 of the dice that have been rolled, add the total of those 2 dice together, and use them to trigger one of your companions here on this board that will help you to explore the map. Now as the active player, I would have access to all 4 of these dice, but other players would only have access to the 3 white dice. So now I would need to choose 2 of the dice and add them together, and use those 2 dice to trigger a companion. Now it doesn't matter what dice I choose, other players can use the same dice that I choose, so it's not like I won't be taking them off the board and using them for myself. They would just stay on there, and anybody can choose any of the 2 dice that they have access to be able to trigger something. Now the idea is that we are trying to explore the island, ultimately trying to visit all the different towns on the island. So towns are these squares here. I'll just circle one here for you to see. There's one town there, and then there are multiple towns all over the map that we are trying to visit. Once one person has visited every town on the map, that will immediately end the game and we'll see who the winner is. As we explore towns, we will be tracking them here on our companion board. In this top right hand corner of the board tracks the towns that we have visited. Now this map in particular tells there are 11 towns on this map. There are 12 spaces in this little square to track the towns. So in a multiplayer game, you would normally just mark off the last space with the player cube there to denote that's not going to be used, because we only need 11 of those spaces to track the towns. And as we visit the towns, we'll be adding little town markers into there to keep track. We start off with one town already in there because that will be our starting position. So the one I've circled here will be where we start. So what do we do with the dice once they've been rolled? So on our player board over here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different companions that we can activate on our turn. We choose 2 dice and activate one of those companions. Each companion tells you what terrain they help you move into. So the coachman here, he allows us to go to grass and mountain regions. Merchant allows us to go to grassland and desert regions. The guide allows us to go to desert and jungle regions. The adventurer allows us to go to jungle and mountain regions, and the sailor allows us to go to water and sailboat spaces. And each one of these different companions comes with its own sort of conditions that we need to meet in order to activate them. So we're going to run through them individually now and tell you what they do. So first off with the coachman. The first time we activate the coachman, we can activate him with any number that we want. So if I've got these dice here, I could say I'm going to take the 1 and the 2. We would add the total of those 2 dice together to make a 3. Then I would take one of these D12, tiny little D12s, mark it with a 3 and put it onto the first space of the coachman track there. And then I will be allowed to move into either grassland or mountain from one of my spaces that I currently have on the board. So at the start of the game, I only have one town where I started from, so I can draw from my town into either mountain or grasslands. So I could either come down here to the mountain, or I could go up there into the grassland. So I would just draw a line and go into the grassland there. And that is my turn done. From then on, with the coachman, if I want to activate them again in the future, I have to use a number that is equal to or higher than the number currently printed on the die. So if I wanted to use the coachman again, I would have to activate it. I would have to use dice that total 3 or higher. So as I go through the game using this coachman, the dice will move along the track with the corresponding dice value that I use to activate it. This will likely go up during the game, so maybe it'll go up to, say, a 6 when it comes to here. So I have to be careful that I don't go too high too soon, so I wouldn't be able to activate the coachman. And every time I activate him, he'll allow me to move into one of these two terrains. Now, when the dice comes to this spot, you'll notice that the next square in the track has an X on it, and it's also squared, and it's not hex or pentagon sort of shape to fit the dice in. If this spot is still uncovered with a red X on it, I am not allowed to activate the coachman to move on to the next space until I cover this spot. And the way that I do that is that I need to visit tavern spaces on my map here. So we have one tavern here, we have a tavern down here, and we have a third tavern there in the middle. So once I visit one of these taverns, I will take one of my little player markers and put it in there, and that tells me that I can now pass through that space safely onto the next space. And that's how we activate the coachman. Always equal to or higher than the value that is currently printed on my D12. So the merchant next. How do we activate the merchant? It's very simple. You will see each column comes with a number printed above it, and each row comes with a number printed alongside of it. When we choose our two dice, we would just simply look at the row or column that corresponds to the dice that we have taken and add a cube onto that row or column. So for example, if I take this 4 and 2, I've got a total of 6. So I look at column number 6, I add a cube anywhere I want in that column. So let's say I added it there, and then I would get to move into either desert or grasslands. So I'd move from here up into the desert. And that's how the merchant works. I'll come back to all these monster symbols and treasure symbols and diamond symbols a bit later on, after I've explained how to activate each companion. So the next companion is the guide here. The guide has sort of a snaking path to go along. To go into the first space of the track, I need to get dice that total 5 or higher. So I could use this 6 again if I wanted to. That is equal to or higher than 5. So I would just place my cube in there to say I have triggered that space, and then I would get to move on either desert or jungle. So let's say I want to carry on moving up to the desert that way. And we continue like that along the track, always having to roll equal to or higher than the value printed above the space. So it's 7, then 9, then 10, then back down to 9, 3, so on and so forth. Next up is the adventurer. Now the adventurer comes with 3 different mountains that he's trying to traverse. We must complete the mountains in order, this left one, then the middle one, then the right hand one. And how this works is when you start a mountain, you can use any value of dice. So again, let's say I use this 1 and 2 this time with a 3. So I'll take my other little D12 here and mark 3 down at the bottom of the mountain. Then I'm allowed to move into either mountain or jungle. So let's say I want to move down here. Let's go this way into the jungle. In the future then, if I want to activate my adventure again, if I'm climbing up the mountain, notice you'll be going up the mountain, then coming back down it. So if I'm climbing up the mountain, my next number has to be higher than the previous number. So I need to roll something higher than a 3 in order to move to the next space. Let's say this time I want to use the 6. 4 and a 2 makes a 6. Change this into a 6. Where's it gone? There's the 6 into the second space, and then again I get to move on either mountain or jungle. So let's move on to the jungle up this way. Then again, I could use the 4 and a 3. That'll be a 7. Use 7 is higher than a 6, takes me to the top of the mountain, and again I can move on the map. But now, from then on, I'm coming back down the mountain for my next 2 spaces, so my next rolls have to be lower than 7. So my next one would have to be lower than a 7, and I got to be careful not to go too low so I'm able to actually get down the mountain. And that's how the adventurer works. Finally, it's the sailor, and the sailor is the only companion that allows you to move into water or boats. Now, in this map that I'm showing you right now, there are no boats on this one, but we do have water spaces running through the middle of the map here. In order to activate the sailor, all I need to do is roll doubles. So the dice rolls I have here, I don't have the right dice to be able to activate the sailor because I don't have any doubles, but let's say I had a double 4. I would just use those 2 double 4s, put my cube in there to say I'm activating the sailor, and then I can draw a line into the water. Now just a quick explanation about how you're allowed to draw on your map. You're always allowed to start new sort of trails from towns, but you can never branch off a trail that you've already created. So you can continue a trail, so I could continue this one further on if I wanted to, or this one up here. So I could, because I've just activated my sailor, move from here into the water there. That's fine, not a problem. However, I can't branch off the middle of the trail, for example, so I couldn't use this sailor to move from this space into the water there, because that's branching off an already visited trail. The only things you can branch off from are town spaces. So if in the future I was able to come down here and visit this town, now I've visited another town, I circle that, and now in the future I can sort of branch off and make different paths. So from this town I could go up there and then up there, or in the future I could come off there again and come this way if I wanted to. That's sort of how the ruling works when you're exploring the map. You either continue a trail that you've already got, or you can branch off from a town you've already visited. And that's how all the companions work, and that's how you traverse the map. So let's have a little look at some of the things that are on the map, or some of the things that are on the companions, and I'll show you what they do. So if we look at the companions, you can see that most of the companions, the coachman, the guide, the adventurer, and the sailor, come with little gem spaces and little monster spaces that you're going to be moving into. When you move into a gem space, you're going to gain points equal to the value of the dice that you use to move into that space. So for example, if this dice was here and I had rolled this 8, I would activate the coachman with this, because it is equal to or higher than the number that's previously on it. That is an 8. The 8 goes into that diamond space. I move onto either mountain or grassland, and I would also gain 8 points, because 8 is the number that I use to activate it, and that is tracked on this tracker around the outside of the board. And that works the same for all of the other sailor, adventurer, and guide. Anytime you move into the diamond spaces, it's always points equal to the dice that you use to activate that spot. In a similar vein, when you move into a monster spot, you will lose the points of the dice that you use to move into that space. So ideally, when we're playing this, we want to use high numbers when we're going into ruby spaces, and low numbers when we're moving into monster spaces, because we want to gain as many points as possible but lose as few points as possible. However, the merchant works slightly differently. Notice there are monster spaces down the diagonal here on the merchant board. Whenever we add a cube onto a monster spot, we are going to roll this blue die, and we're going to lose however many points we roll on the die. So monster in there, roll the die. I rolled a 1, lovely little roll. I only lose 1 point, down to 1 point. Similarly, if you notice, there are treasure chests at the bottom of each column at the side of each row. If you are to fill up one of those rows or columns, as soon as I have filled up this column, I again will roll the blue die and gain that many points. So I only gained 1 point, so back up to 8. But that's how the treasure chests work, and that's how the monsters work for the merchants. And that's a big way that we're going to be scoring points during the game. Now let's have a look at some features on the map here. So as I said, there are towns that we visited, there are taverns that we can visit in order to unlock spaces on our coachman track, and they will come with other benefits as well in the solo game, which I'll explain later. Then there are also these shield spaces here with a little arrow around them. There's one there, one there, and one there. When you move into one of these spaces, you take one of these little shield markers and add it into the track here on the merchant board. In the future then, when I'm doing a roll to either find out how much treasure I'm getting or how much points I'm losing from a monster, I can spend this to re-roll the die that I just rolled. So if I'm doing a monster roll and I roll a high value, I might want to spend this token to re-roll it to try and roll a lower one, or vice versa for the treasure chests. The last kind of space that we have on the map is these treasure chests, which I've moved into here. There's a treasure chest there, there, and down here. When you move into a treasure chest, similarly to the shields, you take one of these treasure chest tokens and add it onto the treasure chest track. Then in the future, when I'm rolling for treasure chests and the points for that, I can spend one of these tokens to double the points that I get for that treasure chest. And that's pretty much how you play a Wayfarer's Tale. As I said, the game will end when somebody has visited all of the towns, and the game will end immediately. And then in the multiplayer game, there is some end game scoring. So each player is going to score 5 points for every town that they've managed to visit. They're going to score 3 points per town that is in their longest continuous route. and they're going to add those points to the value of their score track that they had got up to that point, and whoever has the most points wins. Each map then will also come with its own sort of special scoring rules. So in this map, they have what's called a collection bonus, where the first person that visits all of the towns in a particular terrain will score points. So it says the first person to visit both towns in the desert will score 5 points. Person who can visit all 3 towns in the grasslands scores 6 points, so on and so forth. So there's different ways that you can score points depending on the map that you play in, as well as the regular scoring. And that's the game. So let me explain a little bit that's different about the solo game. So first of all, the game comes with this little solo campaign book. So to play the solo game, you basically the game comes with a campaign of 8 scenarios, I believe it is. 8 scenarios. And each scenario will give you different sort of goals that you're trying to achieve in order to win, to move on to the next scenario. The first thing that's different during setup is that we don't use a little player marker to mark the town that we're not going to be using for this map. Instead, we will use a regular town marker to mark it, because in a solo game, we're allowed to spend these towns to do certain things. The other main thing for the solo game is that we don't have access to all 4 of these dice like we would in a multiplayer game. We only have access to the 2 white dice and 1 red dice, but we will always have access to all 3 of them if we want to. So on my turn, I will roll all 3 dice. Again, I will add the red one in there and the 2 white ones there, and I can choose any combination of these 3 dice to use to trigger my companions. However, using the red die will come at a bit of a cost, because in the solo game, we will have a little purple marker on our point tracker, and this is going to be our health tracker. We will have a certain number of health points, and every time I use the red die, I would have to lose 1 health point. If my health points were ever to get to 0, I would lose the scenario. So even though I have access to all of the dice all the time, it does come with some sort of restriction in that it could penalize me and my health. However, as I said, I can spend towns to do certain things to help me during the game. So before I roll my dice, I can, if I want, spend 1 town to add the 3rd white die to my dice roll. So I could have access to all 4 dice if I feel I need to. So that's one thing I can use towns for. The other 2 things I can do with towns is after I roll, I can spend 2 of the towns, and when I spend towns, I will remove them from my board and replace them with my own markers, so I can still keep track of how many towns I've actually visited. I can spend 2 towns to re-roll all of my dice. If I don't like what I've got, I spend 2 towns, re-roll. Fairly simple. And then the last thing I can do with my towns is after I have rolled the dice, I can spend 1 town to increase or decrease the value of a die by 1. And I can spend as many towns as I want in 1 turn to do that. So that's the extra thing with the dice. Every time I use the red die, I will lose health, but I have towns that will help me manipulate my dice, hopefully to help me explore the map properly. The other thing to do with my health track is that every time I activate a space on my companion board that has a monster in it, as well as losing the points for it, I will also lose 1 health. The next addition to the solo game is this little deck of cards here. This is called the Tavern deck. And this is seeded with a certain number of cards, depending on the scenario that we're playing. And every time I visit a tavern, as well as unlocking a space for my coachman to go through, I will draw the top card of this deck and immediately do whatever it says. And in a solo game, this deck is always going to be a positive deck. It will do something good for me. And then finally, the only other difference then is the end game and end game scoring. Now in the solo game, we don't do any end game scoring, so we will not score points for the total number of towns we visited, we will not score points for our longest route, we will not score any map specific bonus points like the collection bonuses. We will only literally score what points we have accumulated on our score track. And the number of points we're trying to get is going to be dependent on the scenario that we're playing. And it may also come with some extra rules or goals for us to try and achieve during that scenario as well. But in the solo game, the game will end similarly to the multiplayer game. Once we have visited all the towns, that is game over. However, there are other ways that the game can end before that. If our health point is to ever get down to 0, that is it. Game over and we lose. The other thing that I didn't explain actually during the multiplayer explanation is that we have miss rolls that we can use. So usually in the multiplayer game, you cannot use the dice that have been rolled for whatever reason. Then you would have to mark off one of the missed rolls and don't actually get to use the dice. If the player has marked off 3 missed rolls, that also ends the game. So if I can't use any dice, I'd have to mark off a missed roll. However, in the solo game, we can use missed rolls to avoid taking health damage. So if we've rolled dice and we are going to be taking some sort of hit point damage during our turn, we can just say, right, I'm not going to use the dice this turn, I'm just going to mark a miss roll. I wouldn't activate one of our companions. I would essentially miss my turn and roll again next turn, just to try and avoid losing health. So effectively, I'll only be able to use this 2 times, because once I mark the 3rd time, that's going to end the game anyway. And it ends the game with a loss, because I need to visit all the towns usually to be able to win the game. And that's how you play a Wayfarer's Tale. I will just reset the board now and we'll get ready to start a proper game, and I'll see you in just a second. Hello, welcome back. I've reset everything, ready to start the game. So if we have a look at our little solo campaign guide, we see a little table at the front here that shows us the 8 different scenarios and how to set up certain things and the target score that we're trying to get and certain things like that. So we're going to be doing scenario 1. It tells us what map we're going to be playing on, which is map 1, what we have here. It tells us our starting health. So our starting health is 10, which we are tracking here with a purple cube. And our target score is 50. So we want to try and get 50 points in this game. And then it tells us how to set up our tavern deck. This one says to use 3 solo cards. So in the game comes with a total of 5 solo cards. So there's 3 in the deck there and these 2 here. And I just randomly pick 3 of them, shuffle them together, and that is my tavern deck for this game. Now, if we go into the campaign itself, it has sort of a little story to go along with it. So we will go to scenario 1 in the campaign guide and see what's happening. It's been days of travel to reach the Uncharted Isles, but you're here. Pausing on the hilltop, you take a moment to soak it all in. The mountains and valleys stretch out in front of you. A new world just waiting to be discovered. It's time to write your own chapter, to wander these lands of uncertainty and take your place amongst your people. You gather up your strength, your provisions, and your trusty walking stick and set out into the unknown. So, this is The Journey Begins, scenario 1, and it tells us our objective, again, is to score 50 points, and we have to visit all of the towns. So, that is what we're trying to do. So, let's get into the game then. So, to start off, we are going to roll 1 of the die to find out what town is going to be our starting town. So, there are 3 different starting towns. This is 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, and depending on what I roll, I will start in one of those spaces. So, I have... roll on the screen. I have rolled a 6. So I'm going to start off in this town down here. So we'll circle that, or outline that, and there's our starting town. Alright, let's get into starting the game then. So, we'll roll the 3 dice. So we have a 2, a 6, and the red die is a 2 as well. So essentially we've got an 8 to use right now, unless we want to take a hit on the life track to use the 2. So from here I can move into jungle, mountain, or a grassland. So I've got an 8. I could use the guide. The 8 seems a bit high to use on the coachman to start the game with, since I have to get around all this track equal to or higher than whatever the previous one is. And 8 is also a high number to start on the mountain. A nice low number would be good to start on the mountain. So really I'm looking at merchant or guide, I think. I'm thinking I might want to use... Depends on what I want to move into. So if I want to move into the grass, I can use the merchant, or the jungle, I can use the guide. What I think I want to do is use the guide. Yeah. So I'm going to use the 8. 8 is equal to or higher than 5, so I'll mark that first space. And I can move into desert or jungle. There's no desert to move into from where I am, so I'm just going to move into the jungle this way. And there we go. On to the next turn. We'll roll up again. Okay, so we've got high again. 5, 6, and a 4. So we've got an 11 to use this time. Yes, I'm going to use the 11 on the merchant track. I can put this cube anywhere on the 11 row. However, I am not purposefully allowed to place a cube into a monster space when I have no points to lose. That's not something I can just do to be able to sort of cheat my way out of not losing points. So the rules say I'm not allowed to place a cube into a monster space on the merchant until I have at least 6 points, because 6 points is the most I can lose from a die roll with a monster. So I'm just going to place it into this space here, and I get to move into desert or grassland. So I'm going to move up this way to the grassland. Okay, next turn. Let's roll again. Oh, knocking my towns over. I'd like some low rolls, please. So we've got an 8 again, and a 4 with a red die. I want low so I can use the mountains, ideally. But let's use the 8. I'm going to use the 8 on the guide, so that's equal to or higher than a 7. And I can move jungle or desert, so I'm going to use him to move into the desert up here. Okay, next roll. Let's see what we got. Man, I'm rolling high. Got an 11. And that is good for points on my guide. I want to use my guide so much at the start of the game, but I think I have to. I'm going to use the 11, which is equal to or higher than 9. So I move into this space, which has a diamond on it. So that scores me 11 points because I've used the 11 dice. That gets me 11 points there. So that's not too bad. And I'm going to use it to move into jungle or desert. So let's move into the jungle here and visit another town. There we go. We visited a town. We add another town marker to our town track. And that's that. Okay, let's roll for the next turn. Okay, still rolling really high. Got a 10 and a red 4. Carrying on with the guide at the minute. This is so that we're going to use the 10 to activate the next space, which is 10 or higher. So we'll move that down there. And we're going to move into this jungle space. Come on now, let's start rolling some low numbers, please. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we've got a 9 or a 2. It might be worth me using that 2 so I can just get a 5, which is quite low. It might be worth my while doing that. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it. So I'm going to use the 2 and the 3 as a 5. So I'm going to have to take 1 hit point because I'm using the red die. So I'm going to use it to move into a mountain space. Do I want to use it on the adventurer, or shall I start the coachman? I'm going to start with the adventurer because it gives me another option for jungle, because every time I move on the jungle at the minute I'm using the guide. So yeah, so this is a 5, so I'll take one of my, well, it was already 5, my d12s, add it there, and I can move into jungle or mountain. I'm going to move down to the mountain here, and that gets me a treasure token. I'll take one of these treasure tokens, add it there, so I can use that in the future to get double points from a treasure chest. Very good, let's carry on. Next roll. My goodness, yeah, I'm rolling super high. All the 5s, so I've got 10. So tell you what I will do, I think, is since they're doubles, I'm going to use them to activate my sailor. So I'm going to use the double 5s into my sailor, and I'm going to go into the water from, let's go from this one into there. And then hopefully I can go from here into the tavern there. Okay, next turn. Roll the dice again. Goodness me. We got 9 and then a red 6. You know what? I'm going to use the 9. I am going to use the 9 on the adventurer. So this 5 goes into a 9 because it's higher than 5. And I can move on mountain or jungle. I'm going to move down to the jungle this way. Alright, next turn. Roll up. Got a 9. Oh, and a 1 on the red dice. Oh, 9 I can't use on the adventurer because it has to be higher than the previous number, and I've got a 9 there at the minute. I'm going to use the 9 to activate the merchant, and I'm going to put it... I'm actually going to activate the monster. I'm going to activate the monster, so that loses me a point. Not a point, sorry, a health point, a hit point, because I'm activating the monster, and I now have to roll this die and lose however many points I roll. I really do need to roll low now, please. 5, that's not low. So 5 points I lose, puts me down to 6. Not great. fact, I now get to move on grassland or desert. I'm going to move... Oh, should I move one there? Yes, let's move out of the water into this grassland. And that is a tavern that I have visited. So when I visit a tavern, I draw the top card of the tavern deck and see what happens. We have got a small potion. Small but potent. You quickly down the glimmering elixir. You feel better almost immediately. Recover 1 health. Lovely, lovely. So 1 health back for us. Up to 9. And because we visited a tavern, we will also add a cube into this first tavern space here. So now we've unlocked that for us to move our coachman through later on in the game. Alright, next turn. Roll up. Okay, so we've got a 7 there and a 5 on the red die. Can't really use a whole lot. We can't use a 7 on the adventurer. We can't use a 7 on the guide because we need to be 9 or higher. We can't use a 7 on the merchant because there is no 7 row or column. So my options are I either start the coachman on 7, which is a bit higher than I would have liked, I think, or I use the red die. I'm going to do that. I'm going to lose a hit point, use the red die along with that 5 for 10. I'm going to use it on the adventurer. That's the diamond spot. So that scores me 10 points, putting me up to 16. And I get to go into mountain or jungle. So let's move down the mountain this way. Next turn. Oh, there we go. That's a 1, a 6, and a 3. So we've got a 7 and a 3. I'm going to use the 7 on the adventurer. So we're going to come down from a 10 down to a 7 because we're coming down the mountain now. And again, that's mountain or jungle. So let's go down to this town here. We have visited another town. The town marker there. And we can't forget that we can use these towns to do different things if we want to, re-rolling dice and so on and so forth. Okay, next turn. Okay, another 7 we've got there with a 6 on the red die. I'm going to spend 1 town, so I'll spend this town. I'll replace it with a cube to change the value of this 5 to a 4. So we've got a 6 there. And I'm going to use it on my adventurer from a 7 down to a 6. Oops. 7 down to a 6. And I can move a mountain or jungle. I'm going to move up into this jungle here from that town. Okay, next turn. Let's reroll the dice. There we go. We've got some low numbers finally. So I've got a 1, a 3, and a 2. So I've got 4 there. So that could be a good place to start my coachman off with a 4. Now, when it comes to my adventurer, because I'm starting a second mountain on my next turn, again, this first number that I use on this mountain could be any number again. But I do have to be careful that at the top of the second mountain there's a monster, so I don't want to be going too high when I'm going up that mountain. But there is also a gem at the bottom of the mountain at the other side. So, you know, still want enough points to be able to score something there. But anyway, I'm going to use the 4. And I'm going to start my coachman. So let's take my other die on a 4. So that's going to go there. And that will let me move onto mountain or grasslands. I'm going to go up into the grasslands there. Hopefully get to this tavern. Alright. Next up. Double 5 and a 4. I'm going to use the double 5 on my sailor again, so I'll move that down to the next one, sailor, and I'm going to move up into the water from there. So now I can just jump to that town from there then. Okay, next up. Okay, we've got 8 on the white and a red 2. Yep, I think I'm going to use a merchant on the 8. I'm going to activate another monster, so that loses me a hit point for activating the monster, and then I'm going to have to roll this to lose 3 points. Not too bad. So 1, 2, 3 points lost. And then I can go on to desert or grassland. I'm going to go into another tavern there on the grasslands. So get to mark off the second tavern on the coachman track. So that's all the taverns done. And I get a tavern card. So this time we have a small meal. Filling, if not plentiful, you feel lucky to have found anything to eat tonight at all. Recover one spent town. Good job, I did actually spend a town recently then. So we get 1 town back. That's quite nice. Don't mind that. Alright, next up. Here we've got 2 and 4. And a 4 on the red. I think we're going to use the merchant. We're going to take the 6. Merchant, we're going to add it to this column. And then we can move on desert or grassland. I think I'm going to move on the desert here. Okay, next. Oh, we got a 7 on the white and a red 6. Oh, very tempting to take the points there with a double 6. Tell you what I'm going to do. I don't know if this is a good idea, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to spend 2 towns. I'm going to re-roll all my dice. I don't really like those numbers. I think that's slightly better. We got a 5 there on the white and a red 1. I think I'm going to use the 5 to activate my coachman. So this 4 goes up to a 5. And I can move into desert or, not desert, sorry, grassland or mountain. And I am going to move into a mountain and come down this way. And that is a shield space. I'll take this shield token, add it in there, and that is a reroll for me when I'm rolling for monsters or treasure. Alright, carry on. We've got a 7 again, and we've got a 4. Could just go up to 7 on the coachman. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Let's do it. So I'm going to use the 7. I'm going to move my coachman. So this goes up to, from a 5 to a 7, if I can find it. There's the 7. And that's a gem space I've moved into, so I get 7 points. It'll be on 20 points. And I get to move a mountain or grassland. I am going to move up into the mountain here to get another town. There we go. Add in a town marker. Alright. Next up. Okay, so we've got 4 on the white dice and a 4 on the red die. I'm going to start our adventure off on a 4, I think. So we've got 4 there. And now we can move on mountain or jungle, and we're going to move the mountain down this way. Okay, there we go. Ooh, 11. And a 3 on the red die. I could actually, now, what I am going to do is this. I'm going to spend 1 town. Place that with a cube. Increase this 5 to a 6. I'm going to use the double 6s to move into water, because my sailor will activate a gem space, so that's going to be 12 points. That puts me on to 32 points, and I get to move into water, and that's going to be into the water there. Quite happy with that. Alright, let's roll. Here we got 10 now, and a 4 on the red. Could complete a row of a column of my merchant with the 10. I can move on desert. Yeah, let's do it. I'm going to use the 10. Complete this column on the merchant, because I'm allowed to put it into this row with a 10. So let's first move on to grass or desert. Let's move into desert down here. And then we have filled a column, so we are going to roll for some treasure. We've got a 3. I'll take 3 points. I'm not going to use the double. I'll hopefully save that for a better one later on. I'm not going to use the reroll because it's pretty good. So I'm going to just take the 1, 2, 3 points. Oh, right. Let's carry on. Oh. Okay, so we've got a 9 there. Oh, 5. And a red 6. I'm going to use the 9 on my guide because it's 9 or higher to move to the next space. So I can move on desert or jungle. I'm going to move into the desert over here. Alright, next up, another turn. Okay, so we've rolled a 9 there and a 2 on the red die. And my next space on my guide is 3 or higher, but it's also a monster space. So if I could get a 3, that would be the perfect way to deal with that monster. Now, I'm going to use the 9 on my merchant, I think. So I add a cube there. I can move on desert or grassland. I'm going to move on the desert and get another town. There we go. We'll add another town marker in there. We've got 6 towns left to get to. Okay, let's carry on. So we've got 4. Well, we've got all the 2s, right? So 4 it is. 4 is not quite enough to be able to... Oh, I could spend a town to bump it up to a 5 maybe if I want to use my adventurer, which might not be a bad idea. You know what? I'm going to use it on the guide. I'm going to spend a town. Spend a town to change this 2 to a 1. I've got a 3, which I'm going to use on my guide. So that goes there. I lose a hit point because I've gone to a monster space. And I lose 3 points because I've used a total of 3 on the dice to activate it. And then I can move on desert or jungle. I'm going to move into the jungle here. Okay, let's roll up for the next turn. Got a 7 and a 2 on the red die. I think I'm going to use the 7 on the old coachman there. Let's move it along while we can. So 7 on the coachman. That will give me grasslands or mountain. Let's go to this mountain here and get another town. Okay, so there's a town there. Alright then. We've almost done this whole half of the island. We've just got this last town to find over here. So let's keep going. We've got a 6, which is also doubles, or a red 1 as well. Don't really need doubles yet. And I do want to get... I need a doubles to get to this water space, so I'm not quite there yet. I do probably want to get moving into that desert soon, so I can activate the doubles when they come up. I could use my guide, that's 5 or higher. I think that might be where I'm going. Yeah, we're going to use the guide to go 5 or higher. And I'm gonna now go into that desert space. So I can activate doubles whenever I get them again in the future. Alright. So we've got a red 5, and then we've got 5 on the white dice in total. I think that's a good time to activate my adventure now, because that's 1 higher than a 4. So I'm going to change this 4 into a 5. Oops, lost it. Change into a 5, and I can go jungle or mountain. I'm going to go mountain this way and get a treasure token. So treasure token there. Alright, next roll. We've got 7 and a 6 on the red. So we're going to use the 7 again to activate our coachman. So grassland or mountain. Let's move into the mountain to get the last tavern of the game. So we don't have another tavern to unlock on the coachman track, so we're just going to draw the tavern card and see what we have. We've got a large potion. Oh, that's beautiful. The mysterious potion courses through you, quickly restoring your strength. Recover 2 health. Thank goodness for that. That's good. We're up to 8 now on the health track. We've got a bit more leeway there, which is lovely. Okay, next roll. We've got 9 on the white and a red 4. I could finish a merchant track. A merchant row. Yeah, go on, let's do it. I'm going to use the 9. Add a cube onto the 9 row. So that lets me move on desert or grassland. I'm going to move down this way with the grassland. And I get a treasure because I've completed a row. So let's see what we've got treasure-wise. That is another 3. Yes, go on, let's just take the 3. 1, 2, 3 to 35. Alright, let's carry on. Okay, we've got a 9 with a white dice and a red 6. Okay, I'm going to use the 9 on the guide. I need 7 or higher for the guide. I've almost finished my guide now. That's desert or jungle, so I'm going to move up this way with the jungle, and that gets me a shield. There's the shield. Okay, let's go again. Okay, we've got a 9 again there, and a red 6. I score a lot of points with my guide if I want to take a hit on the health track. I'm going to do it though. I'm going to use the red die, so I'm going to take a hit on the health track. I got 12, which I'll activate my guide with, because I need 9 or higher, and that is a diamond space, gem space going into there. So that gets me 12 points, putting me on 47, and I only need to get to 50. Well, have 50 at the end of the game to win. And I can move on desert or jungle, so let's carry on the jungle this way. Try and get up to that town over there. Okay, let's keep it going. Oh, now I roll a regular 12. Flipping heck. Well, let's just use that 12 to move into the water then with a sailor. So we'll use the sailor, double sixes, into the water. I'm probably not going to use the sailor again. No, because I don't need to travel through the water anymore. Okay, next turn. Okay, we got a 9 and a 2 on the red. I think I'm going to spend 2 towns to reroll. I'm not a massive fan of this roll. Spend 2 towns. I'm going to reroll all 3 of those. Not much better. Got an 8 and a red 2. I think I will use the 8 on my coachman. So 7 goes up to an 8. And mountain or grassland. So let's move into the grasslands again. This town over there. Add another town onto my tracker. 4 left. 4 towns left. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Not too far away. Carry on. Alright. 7. I've just changed the value of my flipping coachman from a 7 to an 8. I could spend a town, couldn't I? That might be worth it. Might be worth it. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to spend 1 town to bump this up to a 3. So now I've got 8. So I can activate my coachman, jumping down here. This is a monster space, so I'm going to lose 1 health. And I'm going to lose 8 points. That takes me down to 39. But I can move on. Grassland or mountain. Let's move into this grassland and get another town. Town visited. Town token. 3 towns left. Okay. We've got 8 again. And a red 3. Where do I want to go? So I want jungle up this way, or I want mountain this way, maybe desert. Yeah, let's do our coachman with the 8. That gets us 8 points back. Bring us back to 47. And we're going to use the coachman to move into the mountains here, so we can get another shield. I've got 3 shields here and 2 chests. I probably want to start filling my merchant up so I can try and get my points from there. Okay, next. Ooh, all the 1s. Right, okay. Can't really do anything with these. Can't use them on my merchant. Can't use them on my adventurer. Guide is done. Can't use them on my coachman. So let's spend a town. Let's change this 1 into a 2. So we're going to use this 3 on my merchant. There. I can move on desert or grass. So let's move grass here. Okay. Alright, we've got a 6. And a 6 on red. Okay, I'm going to use the 6 on my adventurer. So this 5 goes up to a 6. So that's going to lose me 6 points. We're down to 41. And a hit point because I've gone into a monster space. And I can move a mountain or jungle. Let's move up the jungle here. Okay, another roll. We've got 3. And a 3 on the red. I'm going to use a 3 again on my merchant. Move on desert or grass. Let's move into the desert here to get another town. Okay, now we only have 2 towns left to visit. I'm 1 space away from one and 3 spaces away from the other, so we should be okay. We just need to make sure we get up above 50 points though. Okay, let's carry on. Alright, we've got an 8. And we've got a red 2. So let's use our 8 on our coachman. And to move on grass or mountain, so we're going to move into the grass here. Okay, next up. We've got another 8. 2 on the red. What I'm going to do is use the 8 on my merchant to fill up this row here, or to carry on this row. That moves me on grassland or desert. I'm just going to move into the desert here. I'm only doing it because I want to try and fill up some merchant spaces to use my double treasure chest before the game is over. So let's carry on here. Here we've got 4, a red 1. That's kind of great because I'm going to use that 4 to fill in this top row of the merchant track. So I can move on desert or grass. I'm going to move into the desert there. And I've finished the top row. So let's roll this dice. We've got 6. There we go. We're going to spend a double chest for that. Double that to 12 points takes us to 53. There we go. So now we've got some 50 points. Okay, let's keep going then. Just need to finish this game off now. We got 10 and a red 6. We are going to use that 10 on our coachman, which takes us to a diamond spot for another 10 points, taking us to 63 points, and moves us on grass or mountain. So we will move into the mountain here. So now our last 2 spaces are jungle spaces for the towns, and the only place we can go in the jungle at the minute is our adventurer. So we need to try and roll low. We need to go lower than 6. We've got 6 with a red 5. So we will spend one of our towns. I'm just going to lay it down because I don't have any tokens left. So I'll lay it down to indicate that I've used it. To change this 3 into a 2, I've got a 5. So this 6 turns into a 5, and I can go on to jungle or mountain. So let's go into the jungle here and get another town. And let's carry on. There we go. We've rolled a nice 3 there. Change this 5 down to a 3 to get to the bottom of the mountain, which is a gem space, giving us 1, 2, 3 points. And it moves us into our final jungle space. For our final town. And there we have visited all of the towns. And that is game over. We have completed the objective, which was to visit all the towns, which we have done, and score at least 50 points, which we have done because we have a total of 66 points. And there we go. That is scenario 1 of the solo campaign for A Wayfarer's Tale. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It's a very good, fun little roll and write game with a lot of cool different ways to activate your companions, which you have to sort of think about while you're trying to choose dice, and you can push your luck quite a bit on these kind of things because, you know, I flew up the guide track early in this game, and when he was finished at the end of the game, the only way I could then move on jungle tracks was to use my adventurer. So, you know, that could be quite limiting depending on how you've managed to work that. Limitations on all of them, you know, once we get too high on the coachman, he becomes a bit more limiting, and when we start filling up the merchant with all these cubes, we're limited on what dice we can use. It's really good fun. And I always love exploring maps and trying to figure out the best way to get around those kind of things. Yeah, it's a fun game. I hope you guys enjoy watching it, and I will most likely put out more of these in the future so we can carry on through this solo campaign. There's only 8 scenarios in this, so it should be a nice easy one to get through. So I'll see you again in the future. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Please leave any comments down below so you can let me know what you think of the game. Let me know where I went wrong, if I did anywhere. And I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.